Hello and welcome to the video. I'm Noelle.
My name is Cade, and we created the mini documentary Nourished.
In this video, we're going to go behind the scenes in the film Nourished, explore even in more depth how the film was made, and we are going to be addressing the controversial placenta shot. All right, Cade, how are we doing today?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm excited to go into this behind the scenes.
Me too. It's crazy. I actually posted the video 6 months ago. So
I can't believe it's been 6 months.
And around a year ago is when we started making the film. So it's just crazy how fast time flies, and like it's already there. So it's cool.
Well, let's dive into some questions. The first question I want to ask is, what is the goal in creating Nourished, and how did the idea come to be?
Well, the idea actually came from you. We were sitting down trying to think about our next film that we wanted to create, and we had a ton of sort of anecdotal evidence or experiences with people that have been taking our supplements and trying animal-based. And you kind of brought up how stark that evidence was, and that we should be telling these stories because they're insane. You know, people are struggling with fertility for years, you know, trying all these different things, and then they go animal-based, they try our supplements, and all of a sudden they're able to fix a lot of the problems that they've had. If people are struggling with infertility or just in general having, you know, maybe a rough pregnancy, postpartum, etc., this film is something that could potentially help those people out. And you're almost helping 2, 3, 4, you're helping many generations of people that come into this world as you're focusing on, you know, your nutrition when you're pregnant, before you're pregnant, and postpartum. So it's just a cool, like, the impact it could potentially have is amazing. So I think we kind of resonated with that message, and we were like, yo, we need to make this. Nourished
is a film that is so multidimensional, so many layers, so many different people's stories. What would you say for you was the hardest part in creating it?
So yeah, there's a lot of different parts that make creating something like this hard, whether it's technical aspects from like cinematography or editing. But I think the hardest part of just what we're trying to do at Heart and Soil is not create films that are so much like us versus them or whatever it is. And like, obviously there's a lot of vegan documentaries that exist in the world, and they're very, I would argue, kind of like pointing the finger, making people feel guilty. These are obviously like controversial topics, right? And I think when you approach a controversial topic, you do have to be kind of mindful on how you push that message.
Well, speaking of controversy, I think let's go into the placenta shot, because that shot that was the shot that launched 1,000 ships. I mean, that was really controversial. So I want to go into that first. If you could share a little bit about acquiring those placentas and kind of a little bit more framework around that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it wasn't planned. We had no idea this was going to happen. We chose to obviously interview Lindsay as our midwife in the film.
She's phenomenal.
We were kind of hoping maybe there was a, birth maybe about to happen. There's actually a part in the film, I left it out obviously, but where she's like, gets a text and she's like, might have been someone being pregnant. She's like always on call.
Yeah. So cool.
But so the funny part is, so we landed in California. We had just left, I think, Washington.
Oh yeah, that's right. It was
And we landed there. It was nighttime, and Lindsay texts you, and she's like, "Hey, so I happen to have these 2 placentas. Do you want them?" And I was like, Noelle, is that a question? Like, what? Like, yes, we want them. Like,
I didn't even have breakfast. You're like, you're running out.
Yeah, I was like,
this is shot.
Yeah. And I was just like, and it's crazy because like, I think, stuff like that, it's like, it is very difficult to plan something like that. Someone asked if like the placentas were frozen. They were not frozen. They were very similar birth times as far as like how long the pregnancy went. You actually got to touch it. She offered for me to touch it. I was like, I don't want to touch it.
Oh, I wanted to get my hands in there.
Yeah.
I wanted to feel what it felt like.
Well, yeah. How did that feel when you touched the vegetarian one?
So surreal. It felt like the coral reef.
This is called calcification. If you feel it, it's hard.
It was so rough. I couldn't even have imagined that baby was getting any of the nutrients that it needed from something like that. It was, and again, those placentas were so close in time. I think they were refrigerated at the same time.
Yeah. And obviously this isn't like science, right? People sometimes get aggravated because they're like, there's so many variables. And like, that is the way life works though, is like, even if you were to take, like say like a very controlled trial study around this stuff, there's so many variables that are at play.
Yeah.
And sometimes people can get so caught up in the weeds where it's like, hey, let's just like kind of just use intuition a little bit, kind of look at things for how they are, and not be so like, it has to be all these things, because it will never be that. way.
Right.
Like science is so flawed in so many different ways. And I'm not saying we shouldn't listen to science. It's beneficial to look at all of these variables, anecdotal
Definitely.
evidence, personal evidence, personal trials, and then also the science to kind of combine that together. And you can do that with this stuff. And this is just another thing to look at. And something I like to say too is just like we are intuitive beings with a capacity for science versus scientific beings with a capacity for intuition. So what that means is that we start off, and how history has always been is relying on our intuition to get us by. And we are intuitive beings. And now we have the beauty of the capacity for science where we can take our intuition, combine this with knowledge and science and create a beautiful life with that. But we have to understand where we come from first and how we can operate in this world. And that's just one way that I do things, but that's something to just keep in mind.
The people want to know, what other films is Heart and Soil working on? What other films are we working on? And what is the goal of these films?
Yeah, so we're working on a few different concepts. One of them I can't really mention right now, but it's kind of related to a specific oil or oils. I'm not going to say what, but I think you know what I'm talking about. But that's a little teaser. And then we're also working on what I would even say shorter ones. We're calling these animal-based stories. We're basically telling these amazing stories of people that are doing amazing things in their life, while animal-based is fueling them. Well, Noelle, I appreciate you asking all those questions and appreciate all your help on the film. If you haven't checked out Nourished yet, make sure you go do so. And now we're going to transition into some of the questions, some of the more technical stuff that we're going to bring a health guide on from Heart and Soil. So Zachary, welcome to the set.
Welcome.
What's up?
Wow.
Hey, Zach.
How's it going?
How are you?
Good.
Nice.
Well,
Thanks for coming on. Talk a little bit about what you do at Heart and Soil, the health success team,
yeah.
and some things that you're working on.
Cool. Yeah, like you said, one of the health guides on the health success team here at Heart and Soil. So basically that means I correspond with our customers and just answer whatever questions they have about the supplements, the animal-based diet, nutrition in general, and just how to live a healthy lifestyle.
That's awesome, Zach. Well, we're going to dive into some questions here.
Cool.
So the first one is, are grass-fed liver pills enough, or do I need to eat actual liver for optimal pregnancy?
Yeah. Well, we actually have some cool research that shows that like the desiccated organs are just as effective in terms of supplying the body with the nutrients it needs to, well, just be healthy in general, including support a pregnancy.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we noticed when we were making the film is that, a common thing that comes up that people ask is like, what should I start eating when I'm pregnant? And if you look up the recommendations, it's all like vegetarian recommendations, So what are your thoughts on just like including plants into the diet? Is it necessary? Why is it recommended so much?
Yeah,
when pregnant people.
Yeah, nice.
Why is meat veganized or demonized?
Right.
Just curious on that.
Yeah, like, can you include plants in your diet while you're pregnant? Of course, some people definitely have sensitivities where they should really limit like certain plant foods. But it's probably fine to include some, but I don't feel that it's a great idea to base your diet mostly on like plant foods. They just don't supply fat soluble vitamins that are super important for, pregnancy and fetal development and everything. And then, fatty acids as well is super, super important during pregnancy. And you just don't really get a lot of that from a lot of vegetarian foods. You don't get the right fatty acids. Also like meats and organs that are really rich in like bioavailable nutrients. So like plant foods, believe it or not, they can actually kind of restrict your body from absorbing important minerals. So if you're eating a diet that's very, very rich in certain like plant foods like nuts and seeds and even, vegetables like, kale and what have you, it could actually inhibit your body from absorbing these minerals that your body needs to be healthy in general and, create a baby.
That's crazy.
Is that what they call anti-nutrients?
Yeah, that's right.
That's okay.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of them.
Thank you, Zach. We're going to dive into another question.
Okay.
It goes as follows. Isn't the liver full of retinol? I thought that having too much retinol causes birth defects. How much liver should you eat before you need to worry about causing birth defects? Nice.
Good question. So liver definitely contains retinol, which is preformed vitamin A. Super important nutrient for a lot of things. So the concern that people have with getting too much vitamin A during pregnancy, so there was this study done in 1995 at Boston University, I think.
Okay.
And basically they were feeding these women about 10,000 IU of vitamin A per day. And what the result was that there was an increase in birth defects, right? But they were feeding the women a synthetic version of
Okay.
vitamin A, and they were giving it to them in like a like fortified cereal. So that is totally different than the vitamin A you get from like real whole foods like liver. So there's been research done like after that study that I mentioned and even a little bit before. And this research actually points to the fact that like if you're not getting enough vitamin A,
Right.
you're at risk for having a child with birth defects.
Is it possible to have too much even through liver?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
also true. Yeah,
Okay.
good thing you
Yeah.
asked that.
So something that when we were interviewing Lindsay, I think she actually said it off camera, but just about the vitamin A stuff is like, yes, right. Vitamin A toxicity. I mean, any sort of mineral or vitamin can be toxic in an
Absolutely.
abundance form.
Right.
But most people are deficient in vitamin A.
Yeah.
They're not getting enough of it. So, I mean,
Right.
if you're, you know, I mean, yeah, you can listen to your body or look at your diet or speak to a health professional about how much vitamin A you're consuming.
Right.
But most people are deficient, and liver is this bioavailable source of it that they can get. Versus synthetic prenatals that do contain retinol
Yeah.
a lot of times because you need it for pregnancy.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, I mean, my thought process is like, yes, it can be a toxic thing, but also without enough of it, that's also
Yeah.
just as toxic.
Yeah,
right? In
it's
its
so
own
right.
form. So,
Yeah, and I think the person asked like how much should you get? The research that we kind of have, by the way, if like you want this data like to look at, you can send us an email and we can connect you with that. But like the research showed that like somewhere between 20,000 and 2,500 IU of vitamin A is kind of like perfect for pregnancy. And like
Okay.
there's a little bit of variance with the individual, of course, but that's like how much you would kind of aim for. But to get this, like we would suggest consuming 0.5 to 1 ounce of liver a day, which is not very much.
Not a lot at
And
all.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
and that's about what we have in like a serving
Yeah,
size of a
yeah,
supplement.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like all of our supplements, like none of them have more than half an ounce of liver like per
Yeah.
serving. So
Yeah.
it's kind of perfect.
yeah.
So yeah, that's cool. Amazing. Appreciate you guys watching this video. Make sure you check out Nourished, share with some friends. Check out also some of the other videos that we're working on our YouTube channel, some of the other films that we have coming out. And Noelle, thank you for all your help.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
being
I had so
here.
much fun.
Zach, you're awesome. Thanks a lot, guys. See you next one.